There are things we carry for a lifetime, words we never said, choices we can't take back. But what if sharing them now could set someone free? This is Aging Out Loud, where untold stories finally find their voice.
I stood at the podium staring at a room full of faces I barely recognized, holding a speech I never thought I'd have to write. My son David was 32 years old when he died. And I realized in that moment that I had never once told him I was proud of him. Not once. And now, it was too late. The weight of those unspoken words crushed me more than the grief itself. How do you live with the knowledge that your child died without knowing how much you valued them? How do you carry the burden of love that was felt but never expressed? This is the story of my biggest regret and why I'm sharing it with you today. My name is Robert, and I was what you might call an old school father. I grew up in the 1960s when men didn't talk about feelings, when showing emotion was seen as weakness, and when the phrase, "I love you," was reserved for your wife, if you were lucky. My own father never told me he was proud of me either. He showed it through nods of approval, through providing for our family, through being present at important events. But the words, those were never spoken. I carried this pattern into my own parenting without even realizing it. When David was born, I promised myself I would be a better father than mine had been. I would be present, involved, supportive. And I was, in my own way. I attended every baseball game, every school play, every graduation. I worked extra hours to pay for his college education. I taught him how to drive, how to throw a punch, how to change a tire. I was there. But I never told him I was proud of him. When David was 7 and won his first spelling bee, I clapped loudly from the audience and bought him ice cream afterward. But I never said the words. When he was 12 and made the honor roll for the first time, I hung the certificate on the refrigerator and ruffled his hair, but I never said the words. When he was 16 and got his first job, I nodded approvingly and told him about the value of hard work, but I never said the words. The opportunities were endless, and I missed every single one.
David grew up to be an incredible man, despite my emotional limitations. He became a pediatric nurse, dedicating his life to caring for sick children. He volunteered at homeless shelters on weekends. He called me every Sunday, without fail, even when I was gruff and distracted. He got married to a wonderful woman named Sarah, and they had 2 beautiful children. He was everything I had hoped he would become and more. And still, I never told him I was proud of him. I told myself that he knew. I told myself that action spoke louder than words. I told myself that all the times I bragged about him to my friends at work, all the times I showed off his pictures to neighbors, all the times I beamed with pride when people complimented him, I told myself that somehow he must have known. But knowing and hearing are 2 different things entirely. The call came on a Tuesday morning. David had been driving home from a late shift at the hospital when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact was instantaneous. He never even saw it coming. The police officer's voice on the phone sounded distant and mechanical as he delivered the news that shattered my world into pieces. The days that followed were a blur of funeral arrangements, casseroles from neighbors, and phone calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Sarah, devastated by her own grief, asked me to speak at the funeral. David always said you were his hero, she told me through tears. He would want you to say something. Hero. The word echoed in my mind as I sat down to write the eulogy. How could I be his hero when I had failed him in the most basic way a father could fail his child? How could I stand up in front of all those people and pretend to be the father he deserved when I couldn't even give him the simple gift of knowing I was proud of him? I wrote and rewrote that speech a dozen times. I talked about his accomplishments, his kindness, his dedication to helping others. I shared funny stories from his childhood and touching moments from his adult life. But every word felt hollow because underneath it all was the screaming truth. I had never told him I was proud of him. The morning of the funeral, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror practicing my speech. My wife found me there, tears streaming down my face, unable to get through the first paragraph without breaking down. "What's wrong?" she asked, though we both knew the answer was everything. "I never told him," I whispered. "I never told him I was proud of him."
She wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time in my adult life, I sobbed like a child. All the years of suppressed emotion, all the missed opportunities, and all the love I had felt but never expressed came pouring out in that moment. My wife held me as I grieved not just for my son's death, but for all the words left unsaid. "He knew," she said softly. "David knew you loved him. He knew you were proud of him." But I shook my head. Knowing and hearing are different things. I robbed him of hearing it. I robbed myself of saying it. At the funeral, I stood at that podium, looking out at hundreds of faces. David's coworkers, friends from college, and people whose lives he had touched in ways I was only beginning to understand. They had all come to honor a man who had made a difference in their lives. And I realized that while I had never told him I was proud of him, everyone else could see what I had been too emotionally stunted to express. I deviated from my prepared speech. Instead, I told the truth. "I need to tell you all something," I said, my voice shaking. I never told my son I was proud of him, not once in his 32 years of life. I felt it every single day, but I never said the words. I thought that somehow he would just know. I thought that showing up was enough. I thought that providing for him was enough. I thought that being present was enough. The room was silent except for the sound of people crying. But it wasn't enough, I continued. David deserved to hear those words. He deserved to know that every day of his life I was bursting with pride over the man he had become. He deserved to know that when people asked me about my son, I couldn't contain my joy in talking about him. He deserved to know that I considered myself the luckiest father in the world. I paused, looking at his casket, wishing with every fiber of my being that I could have one more conversation with him. So I'm saying it now, even though it's too late. David, I am so proud of you. I am proud of your compassion, your dedication, and your kindness. I am proud of the way you treated people, the way you made everyone feel important and valued. I am proud of the father you were becoming, the husband you were, and the son you always were. I am proud to be your father, and I am sorry it took until now for me to say it. The funeral was 2 years ago, and not a day goes by that I don't think about those words I never said. But something changed in me that day. Something broke open, and I realized that I didn't have to carry this pattern forward. I didn't have to let my emotional limitations define the rest of my relationships. I started telling people how I felt about them. I told Sarah that I was proud of how she was handling single motherhood. I told my grandchildren that I was proud of their kindness, their creativity, and their courage. I told my wife that I was proud of the woman she had become over our 40 years of marriage. I told my friends, my neighbors, and my coworkers. I became the person I should have been all along.
But mostly, I started visiting David's grave regularly. I sit there and I talk to him, and I tell him all the things I should have said when he was alive. I tell him about his children's accomplishments, about how proud I am of the legacy he left behind, and about how sorry I am that I waited until it was too late. I know he can't hear me now, but I say the words anyway. Because maybe, somehow, love transcends death. Maybe the words we speak to those we've lost aren't really for them. Maybe they're for us, a way of healing the wounds we created through our silence. If you're watching this and you have people in your life that you love, people you're proud of, people who matter to you, tell them. Tell them today. Tell them right now. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you're comfortable with vulnerability. And don't wait until it feels natural. Just tell them. Because the alternative is standing at a podium, looking at a casket, and realizing that all the love in the world doesn't matter if it's never expressed. The alternative is carrying the weight of unspoken words for the rest of your life. I never told my son I was proud of him until his funeral. Don't make the same mistake I did. The people you love need to hear it while they're still here to listen.